Now, I know that Game Week 25 isn't even over yet, but there really is plenty to talk about already. And in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 26. Now, before I actually get into talking about some individual players, I think it's really important to know what's going on in terms of fixtures over the next few weeks. And the main piece of news, it's not new news, but I think it's something that people should really be cognizant about when they're making transfer decisions for Game Week 26. And it all kind of depends upon your chip strategy, right? I have a feeling that there will be probably 2 ways or maybe 3 ways that people play it ahead of Game Week 29. Number 1, they could potentially dead end their team and wildcard in 30. They could potentially use the free hit, or they could look to just use free transfers to deal with Game Week 29 and onwards. But Game Week 29 is a blank for 4 teams. So we got Villa, Crystal Palace, Liverpool and Newcastle. And with it only being 3 game weeks away, considering the time of this video going for Game Week 26, I think it's really important to be cognizant of blank Game Week 29 for making your transfer decisions. So in addition to a blank in Game Week 29, this spreadsheet is courtesy, by the way, of the great Ben Crellin. He is just the absolute FPL fixtures guru. Follow him on Twitter. There's an @ for his, X account below. So we've got a confirmed blank game week in 29 that we've already gone through. A confirmed double game week in 32 for Crystal Palace and Newcastle. Both teams obviously blank as well in game week 29. There's also a potential double game week in game week 33 as well. We could have a double for Villa, a double for Man City, a double for Man United, and a double for Bournemouth as well. That's a likely double game week based on potential cup results. So we're looking at the game week 32-33 period as another opportunity maybe to deploy the assistant manager chip. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. And then a potential, obviously the teams that double in 33 will blank in 34. And then we've also got possible double game weeks as well in blanks in 36 and 37. So there's lots of potential fixture scenarios that could go on. But I just thought it'd be interesting to point that out. So we've got a blank game week in 29, a confirmed double game week in 32, and also a likely double game week in 33 involving Villa, Man City, Man United, Bournemouth, and all of those teams as well would blank in 34 if that comes to fruition. All right, I'll stop blabbering on about fixtures now. All right, we'll start off looking a bit defensively first. What I've got here is some clean sheet odds for the next 5 game weeks according to 11ify. Been a little while since I've used one of their models. That's good to have them back. Arsenal in at number 1, and I'll do a little pitch on Arsenal in a second. Liverpool, Man City, 2nd and 3rd. Crystal Palace, interestingly, in 4th place. Got some good fixtures coming up. Bournemouth in 5th, Chelsea in 6th, Everton 7th, Fulham 8th, Man United 9th, Forest 10th. I've got to say, right now, based on results and how things played out in Game Week 25, I can't say I'm all that massive on any particular defence at the moment. But there is one defence I think deserves a bit of a shout out. And for me, that's Arsenal. Obviously, just kept a clean sheet against Leicester, although that's not the most impressive feat in the world. But I do think with the way that they have so many injuries now in their forward line, they're going to have to resort to being even more solid defensively, I think, to Arsenal. And for me, that means potential for some upcoming clean sheets. So what I've got here is a view of the teams they actually play in those subsequent 5 game weeks and their clean sheet odds. So they got West Ham, Forest, Man United, Chelsea and Fulham as their next 5 fixtures. And you might think some of those games are fairly tough. But I think there's a genuine opportunity for Arsenal to keep a clean sheet in all of those games. West Ham at home, I think, is a good opportunity for a clean sheet. Nottingham Forest away, on the face of it, is a tough fixture. But in reality, I know they've just come off the back of beating Brighton 7-0 and Chris Wood's on an absolute scoring tear. Obviously, lost against Fulham in Game Week 25. I don't think they're all that dangerous in front of goal for us. They don't create all that many chances. So I think there's a potential clean sheet there for Arsenal. Man United, well, we all know how rubbish they are at the moment. They've just lost Ahmad, which we'll talk about in a second. He looks to be out for the next 3 months. So they could potentially keep a clean sheet there, in my opinion. Then Chelsea, who are struggling for results at the moment. That's sort of all the way in the middle of March, but still, at the Emirates, I think there's a clean sheet potential there. And also against Fulham, I think they could keep a clean sheet as well. So I do like the idea of Arsenal defence, and I imagine people who have had Gabriel might have just held him, but I still think, you know, he's one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the game still. And with those fixtures coming up, I think there's some clean sheets for Arsenal. All right then, on the flip side, we've got a look at projected goals scored. This is also according to 11-5 for the next 5 weeks. We got Liverpool top, Man City second, Arsenal third, Chelsea fourth. I usually like to look at all the teams kind of below the top 4 because the top 4 are never really all that surprising. And to be honest, with no Nicholas Jackson now, I would probably rank Chelsea a little bit lower in terms of projected goals. I don't necessarily think Nicholas Jackson is the sole reason that Chelsea score goals, but I just think having an out-and-out centre forward with the kind of movement, etc., that he does really just helps the rest of the team score goals as well. So for me, I'd probably put, now he's injured, I'd put the projected goals for Chelsea a bit further down than that. Teams outside of that, well, we got Bournemouth. In fact, I'll do a little piece on Bournemouth now. 3 really good Bournemouth assets in FPL at the moment. They all came away with attacking returns against Southampton. Assists for Semenyo and Kluivert, and obviously the goal for Dango. I've put a little stats comparison here to compare the 3. And when you look statistically, just the statistics alone actually shows that Dango is the stronger of the 3 in terms of expected returns per 90. His goals and assist ratio, I think, is slightly better than Semenyo and Kluivert. And his dangerousness, expected goal involvements per 90, is slightly better than the other 2. However, I would say still my out-and-out favourite is Kluivert. He's got, you know, the second best XGI per 90. It's basically the same as Dango's, and he's on penalties. So I would always say that Kluivert is my number 1 Bournemouth midfielder. And I'd probably rank Dango as my second favourite now, just considering he is substantially cheaper than the other 2 and is putting up better numbers than Semenyo. But all 3 are decent picks. But I would probably rank them Kluivert 1, Dango 2, and Semenyo as number 3. I'm going to make sure we cover all bandwagons on this video, but I need to talk about Marmoush. And I was going to caveat, well, at least until we saw the end of the game, I was going to caveat it with, well, look at his hat-trick from 0.59 expected goals. 1 game out of 3, small sort of sample size of data, etc., etc. However, with Erling Haaland being potentially injured now, you've got a guy who could potentially be starting in a forward line position as the kind of talismanic forward for Man City, providing obviously Haaland is injured, 7 million. And I think, you know, his minutes, 70-ish minutes most games, I think, to be honest, subbed early, winning against Newcastle because they got Champions League against Real Madrid. That makes sense. But I think he could be a really decent option. However, I would say there's a couple of fixtures in the next 3 which are fairly tough. Obviously, Liverpool, Spurs and Forest. But I just have a feeling, I don't know about you guys, Liverpool are in a little bit of a dip in form at the moment. And I don't know, I have a feeling Man City could pull off a result against Liverpool. They probably score at least against Spurs. Nottingham Forest away, a tough fixture, obviously. But just looking at Man City, they've just obviously beaten Newcastle 4-0. I think also historically this season, they've not had issues as such really scoring goals. They've always been able to put the ball in the back of the net. You know, they've scored in their last 3 games, even though they got beaten by Arsenal 5-1. They scored obviously against Real Madrid as well. I think from at least a goal scoring perspective, Man City is still a team to go for. And if we're looking at Marmoush here at 7 million with an injured Erling Haaland, and also just the sheer lack of pickable forwards, I would say, in FPL right now. They're just dropping like flies in terms of injuries at the moment. I think at 7 million, he could be quite a decent option. It's just that Liverpool and Nottingham Forest game in 26 and 28 do make it a little bit tough to go for him. But if you look 29 onwards, those are some really good fixtures if you want to get him from that point. And obviously, they don't blank. Now, I'm not going to get carried away with Ethan Nwaneri, but what we do have is a guy that's likely to play most games for Arsenal with the sheer amount of injuries they have in their forward line at the moment. A guy that's performing at a really high level for them. And apart from that Forest away fixture, I think the set of fixtures around them, Arsenal could score in them. So you're looking here at a midfielder at the absolute minimum price, starting for, I know they're absolutely, ruined in attack from injuries, but they're still one of the better teams in the league for a goal from goal scoring point of view, at least in my opinion. And he's got 3 attacking returns in his last 5 games. That's basically all I have to say on him. I wouldn't say he's an absolute nailed-on starter in my FPL team every week. But when do we see a starting forward for a top Premier League team that's going to play good minutes, just considering the injuries they've got, for 4.5 million, the minimum price for a midfielder in the game. I think Nwaneri could be a good option, and at 4.5 million, if you don't fancy him every week, you can just bench him. I wanted to talk about him because I think he could be a pretty decent option. So we've got an injury to Amad Diallo. I imagine he's pretty popular, and unfortunately the injury news came out after the FPL deadline. So people who have started him against Spurs, count yourselves unlucky that we got the news after the deadline basically. But it does look like he's set to miss the rest of the season with this injury. So absolutely time to get rid of him. And we just go back to the stats that we've just shown. I think if you're looking to get rid of Amad, straight away, just go for a Bournemouth midfielder, in my opinion. And I'd look at the rankings again that I went through. Justin Clive at number 1, Dango probably as number 2, Semenyo as number 3. So if you've got Amad already, he's out for the season by the looks of it, I'd swap him for a Bournemouth midfielder. Couple more players to talk through. First up, Cole Palmer. Some people getting a little bit impatient with him. You know, he's costing you 11.2 million and he's not really putting up all that good a set of numbers. Especially, I just think, I don't know, I feel like having a centre forward, even though he wasn't all that prolific towards the end of his tenure before he got injured, I think really helped Chelsea in Nicholas Jackson. And I think they're going to struggle without him. And Cole Palmer he's struggled in recent games, just in general. I think he hasn't looked the Cole Palmer of recent. The Cole Palmer we all know and love is probably the way to say it. But I just don't think you can justify getting rid of him. You know, he's got Aston Villa away, who are definitely not a good defence. Then it's Southampton and Leicester, both at home. The next 3 fixtures, I think, for Chelsea are pretty good. And I'd back Cole Palmer to do well in those fixtures. And he is pretty good when he plays the lower level teams as well, isn't he? So yeah, I completely see the logic and reason for why people, you know, starting to lose a bit of patience with Cole Palmer. But for me, I couldn't possibly sell him. And especially when you look at those next 3 fixtures. One player I definitely could sell, though, even though he's got Southampton away coming up, is João Pedro. 3 attacking returns in his last 10 games. I'm pretty sure he had a good chance to score against Chelsea as well. Obviously, he was benched in that game too. I think if I had João Pedro, it'd be time to let him go now. He's still 11.4% owned in the game, so suggest quite a few people still have him. And I would say quite a few of those are active teams as well. Sometimes when you look at ownership, it can be taken up by people who have had a player since the start of the season and then just stop playing the game. But I do feel like some people watching this video will still have João Pedro. For me, it'd be time to get rid of him, and I'll probably just go for Raul Jimenez. That would probably be my favourite replacement for him. So yeah, if I had João Pedro, even though it's Southampton away coming up next, I'd look to get rid, or at least just bench him. Finally, I feel a bit bad because I'm going to be an absolute fence sitter on this one. But Morgan Rogers has been quite disappointing recently. In his last 5 games, he's only got 1 attacking return. And in this Ipswich game just gone, he had 2 or 3 chances to score. And got unlucky, really, I guess you got to say. However, before that, it was 3 blanks, 3 stupid yellow cards. And, well, with that blank in 29, could it be time to consider getting rid of Morgan Rogers? I think it's close for me as to whether it is worth a transfer to one of those Bournemouth midfielders. You look at the next 3 fixtures for him: Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford. They're not all that bad. And I guess if you have a method of dealing with a blank game week in 29 that doesn't involve selling Rogers, or you're using chips, etc., he could be a hold, because yeah, he's got that blank. But if you use your free hit, for example, to deal with it, you hold him on. Then he's got Brighton, Forest, I guess, a tough one. Then Southampton, a potential double. Then. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm on the fence basically about Morgan Rogers, but he's not doing enough in my team at the moment to make me think that his spot is safe. When I went on FPL Raptors podcast, I said I thought Morgan Rogers was the best cheap midfielder in the game. And I just don't think that's the case anymore. We just go back to those Bournemouth midfielders. You know, when you got players of the same price or cheaper putting up the numbers that they are for a team that is arguably playing better than Villa at the moment, it's hard to keep Rogers, isn't it? Let me know in the comments, actually, what you're planning to do with Rogers. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that, and obviously, I hope you enjoyed the intro. I'm going to stick with that intro for these videos because it's become a little bit iconic, I would say. Not that I can be iconic. I'm definitely not getting carried away with that. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. My camera's going in and out of focus there. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. there should be a button just about there on your screen. That just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.